Welcome to Brush and Beyond, where we see the world through an artist's eyes and learn to express our own worlds. Hi, welcome back to Brush and Beyond, and today we're going to be doing our René Magritte inspired art project. The materials that we'll need today are pencils, markers, glue sticks, color pencils, scissors, and paper. So the first thing that we do is we draw and color in a realistic apple on paper, or you can find a clip out of realistic apples on newspapers or magazines. The reason why we want to do this is so that we have the contrast between a really real looking apple and the cartoonish style background that we're going to use, and this kind of contrast is often something that Magritte uses a lot to emphasize the surrealism in his artworks. The next thing that I do is I trace the apple using a pencil on the background so I know where to color around it. So here's where I'm going to start drawing. So what I wanted to do for the background is a New York style background. I drew the apple in the center of a really large fountain, which is what I'm drawing here, and I drew some roads coming out of it that look a little bit like Central Park, which is a park in New York. Now I'm kind of filling in the background as I go, so making it look more like a park. So I'm drawing some trees in the background, some benches. Here I'm drawing in a crosswalk. So in the far background of the artwork, I'm going to be making a skyline. That's something that really makes me think of New York City, and so I'll be drawing the different buildings along the horizontal skyline in the background. So I'm just starting to draw in the buildings. What I'm doing is making them look a little bit more 3D. Again, really thinking about that line between realism and surrealism and how you can kind of use cartoonish or different art styles and add realistic aspects to them. Now I'm just adding in some details for the artwork. This could be windows, bushes, doors, other buildings, anything that you think looks right. Now I start adding in more details to the road. So I add that center line in the road kind of as a dotted horizontal line. Then I'm drawing in some buses and cars, which you see a lot of. I was thinking that these could be taxis since it is New York. So like I was saying earlier, just filling in the space all around the painting with little details that make it look a little bit more realistic. One thing that I really focused on was adding 3D elements to the things that I was drawing. So this fountain, I decided to add kind of a height to it and a width to it, which makes it look more realistic. If you need any help with this, try pulling objects from your house or everyday things that you see. For example, a roll of tape looks pretty similar to this fountain that I'm drawing. The next thing that I do is go ahead and start outlining in black marker. This can be done in Sharpie and probably will be easier, but try and use something that has a point so that you can get more details and more refined look. Don't be afraid to add in details using the marker. So you can see here that I'm kind of drawing in the brick design as I go, and don't feel the need to always plan out everything in pencil if you don't want to. You can add your own details as you go along and just kind of get a feel for what you think looks best. So now I'm going in with some other markers in more vibrant colors. You can do this with colored pencils. It really depends on what you want it to look like. You'll see later that the color pencils on this texture of paper looks a little bit different, so I decided to use it almost strategically for only certain parts of the artwork to make it look more realistic or stand out more. So the markers have a more flat look, I would say, on this paper. So obviously here I'm coloring in the tree in green, but again, you can do this with crayons, markers. You can even paint this or use watercolor paint like we've been using in some previous videos. It's really up to you and what you have available to you. And I think that's one of the great things about these projects is that whatever materials you choose to use will help your artwork look really unique. And so don't be afraid to send them to us and for us to share it with the rest of the world to see how amazing your own artworks are. So now I'm going in with a darker green as the grass. This doesn't have to be grass, it can be anything you want, but I would say if you have a lot of different colors available to you, maybe try mixing up the colors, using some darker, some lighter, so that you have some variety in your shades and that the colors in your painting just look a little bit more vibrant. Now I'm going in with a yellow marker, just in any areas that I think might be gold or where I think yellow might look nice. Again, this is totally up to you. You'll see as we go along that the colors that I'm using aren't super realistic, but they're really bright and colorful, and I think they look nice on the painting. So if you want to do something more realistic, you could use browns and grays, but this is just my personal preference. Now I'm using the yellow to paint in the taxis, the crosswalk, things that you would think are yellow, so like the lines on the road are going to be yellow. Now I'm using my black marker as a shadow. So when you're drawing in a more comic style or a more cartoonish style, using really bold areas of just black might look a little bit more fitting for the style, but if you wanted to make something more realistic, I would use a pencil for the shadow and try and blend it out with your finger. If you place an object down somewhere, you can see that the shadow under it is a little bit more blurry, and so this is just something to think about. Now I'm going in with a bright orange color. Really, I don't have a super specific plan for where I want to put the colors, but I know that I have a few colors in mind. So for example, pink, purple, orange, and yellow, and what I want to do is in the background and throughout the artwork, I want to split it up where I put them so that you can kind of have these really vibrant looks of colors against one another, and this is just kind of me improvising where I put all of the buildings and colors. So you can see now that I'm going in with the pink and doing a really similar thing like I did with the yellow and orange, just picking different areas where I think a pink would look nice. And I do the same thing for purple. Now I'm using blue, and then I also use a little bit of light green. So really just going in with any colors that you prefer. So now this is what I was saying with colored pencils earlier. You'll see right now that the textures of the colored pencils look really different on this specific type of paper, which is watercolor paper. So the reason why this texture is so different is because colored pencils, unlike markers, can't really get into the grooves of the paper. And so there are some dotted areas that are left a little bit white or lighter than the rest of the paper. So I knew this and I wanted to use this to create a cool texture for my artwork. And so I decided to use this on the road and in the sky so that it didn't look all flat like the markers that you see do, but it had a little bit of more variety and uniqueness to the textures. I would also say that using colored pencils is much easier if you want to add more details or outline certain things, and it just makes it easier to get into the smaller areas that markers might not be able to reach. So the last few things that I do are the sky and the water in the fountain. The water in the fountain was going from dark from the top to lighter as we go down. And so if you want to do this, go in with a base color. You can see that I used kind of a dark teal for a base color. And then with a navy colored pencil, I go into the areas that I think want to be darker, and I kind of do a second layer. And this is called layering. And so by using this technique, you can get a gradient of color pencil colors instead of just having a flat colored pencil color. This is also a really good way if you want to learn how to shadow things or objects with color pencils. So the final few steps are here. Basically what I do is I outline in black the apple area that we left empty. And this is because I don't want there to be any white space between the apple and the paper in the background. So I just go ahead and fill that in with a black outline. And I add a few final touches that I noticed I wanted to fix. And this is what your artwork should look like before we glue the apple down. So now you want to get out your glue stick and just stick the apple on. And there is your finished artwork. Thank you so much everyone for watching this art activity inspired by René Magritte. We hope you enjoyed it and we look forward to seeing you in our next videos.